Welcome back, amigos. Today I'm excited to show you guys a plugin I've been using recently called Dehancer Pro. It is essentially a film emulation plugin designed for those of us who shoot digital, which is pretty much most of us because that's what's most accessible to us nowadays as content creators. Full disclosure, they sent me this product to try out, and so I'm going to give you guys my honest review, what I like, what I don't like, and hopefully help you determine if this plugin is right for you. So without further ado, let's hop into DaVinci Resolve and grade a sample clip. In my timeline here, I've dragged a clip from my Paris trip last year. I like this shot a lot because it's outdoors, there's plenty of light, so we have a lot of room for adjustments to be made. Once you have Dehancer Pro installed, let's navigate to our effects panel, search for Dehancer, and drag it onto our first node. Now instantly you'll see that it applies one of its film stocks right off the bat, and obviously this isn't the final look we want, but it will ultimately be a foundation we work with for the following adjustments. So before we dive any further, let's just see what exactly we're working with. What's nice about this is that the order in which they structured all these tools is really the order you should be editing any clips, starting with your color space transformation, then your exposure adjustments, then your coloring tools, the grains, overlays, all those extra spices that really bring an image to life. So before we get into anything further, let's actually convert our color space to Rec 709. So we're gonna choose our camera from the drop down here, and then I shoot with Canon, so let's get that going. And then I primarily shoot with the R5C, and of course I'll always be shooting C-Log 3 cinema gamut. Now that's looking pretty good. Let's see what exposure adjustments we have to make. I think I want this to come down just a tiny bit. That's looking pretty good. I'm not gonna mess too much with the temperature adjustments right now, but if I really do need to, I'll come back to that later. Then let's try and add some contrast into this. So let's first enable these things. Some of the tools are automatically enabled, others aren't, so just keep that in mind. I'm gonna boost the contrast just a tiny bit. I'm liking that right there. And I'm actually gonna turn off the film stock effect just so I have a clearer image of what I'm working with. So the contrast there looks pretty good. I'll bump it up just a little more. Give it a nice little color boost. Awesome, so I like that, that's great. Now let's actually get into choosing our film stock, which is gonna be the spotlight of this whole plugin, right? So you see from the drop down, there's plenty of film stocks that they've scanned in here. Just so many options to choose from. I think for this one, I wanna go for something that's a little bit warmer. It has that pastel, creamy, almost golden type feel to it, and so what I've been digging lately is actually some of the Kodak Vision film stocks. 200T is pretty common. I think I might go with the 50D. It's a little bit more neutral, so later on when we get to the actual color grading, I'm going to push the colors in a certain direction. And then within the push-pull tool, you can adjust the temperature of that film stock. So in this case, I think I'm gonna just leave it as it is. Next, we have film compression. So arguably one of the most important tools within this plugin, because film compression is a very common characteristic of the film look. Essentially what you're doing is you're bringing back the highlights and making sure that they're not blown out. And that's what this white point tool will do for you. So as you see, once I enable this and then I start pushing this white point up, you'll notice that these areas such as the sky up here comes back to life. So we don't want those parts of our image, the overexposed parts, to be too blown out. So I think that's looking pretty good. And then I'll add some color density into the image as well. And really the density tool in this case will be more prominent and noticeable once we get to actually choosing our film print. So I think this is pretty good where it is right now. So the opposite of film compression is going to be expansion, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. You can bring up your shadows here, lift them up, or push the blacks down, crush them if you want. I'm going to leave them as they are. Same thing with the white points. You could bring it up, bring it back down. So I like it how it is right there. Choosing your film print, that is very essential to really bringing that image to life. And once you choose one of these right here from the drop down, you'll see a very big jump in the overall aesthetic. So I'm gonna go for the Kodak 2383, I think, or the Fujifilm. Well, actually, I think I like this last one. This one's looking pretty close to what I have in my mind, so I might stick with this right here. And then I'm going to add a little bit more tonal contrast just so I can get a little more selective of where I want my contrast to be. Maybe not that much, but just ever so slightly, so that we're not just dividing light and dark, but we're getting in between the shadows, the midpoints, the highlights, and making those adjustments there to add a little bit more contrast in the midtones. And here is where some of the magic really happens. We'll push the color density up to maybe around somewhere in the 20s here. I like that. The reason why we push color density so much is because one characteristic of the film look is that you notice that a lot of these strong colors like reds or yellows, they don't just pop, but they're really dense and layered, like almost like they're really palpable. You can really feel them in the frame that's in front of you. That's why you'll see that especially in some of these more experimental films that really push the color grading. Like the reds look really exaggerated, but also they fit in so well, and that's why this color density tool is so important. I really like that they added this here. Now moving on to color head, this is essentially the same as your color grading wheels in DaVinci Resolve or whatever editing platform you're using. You can adjust your yellow, blue, magenta, green, cyan, red curves with just this tool right here. I think I might actually just leave it as it is. Or I might just adjust the yellow blue curve here, push a little bit more yellows in there. Yeah, let's go just a little bit. Yeah, now this is the vintage kind of pastel look I really like. So that's looking pretty good. And then the shadows, I think I'm gonna go for ever so slightly warmer shadows. Just that much right there. I'm gonna prioritize the midtones actually. Really push the warmth, and then you'll see right here in the skin, that's looking pretty cool. So that's good. And then I might just balance it out with a little bit of a cooler highlight. Just right there. Yeah, I like that right there. And so next step here is the film grain. You'll see that it's automatically enabled, which is great. I like it how it is. And what distinguishes this from your normal film grain overlays is that you're not just adding an adjustment layer, but these are actually built in. So this is fantastic right here. Now moving on, we have halation and bloom, arguably two of the most common terms thrown out there. You'll see everyone saying if you want that film look, you gotta have halation, you gotta have a blooming effect. Now I already use a Pro Mist filter, so that's getting me in the right direction, but I'm gonna go ahead and just enable it anyways. I don't like to push the halation too much to the point where it just looks artificial. So I kind of like it where it is right now, honestly. If you zoom in here, you see these lights in the background are definitely feeling the halation. You have a couple different options as well, depending on the sensor you're shooting on. But I'm gonna just keep it as it is right there. I like it how it is. Next we have film damage. You can enable that. It'll just be a nice little textural element, if you will, and you can adjust how much you want to push that. Okay, so our next two options are film breadth and gate weave. Now the reason they included these two options is because when real film is scanned through a camera, there's going to be imperfections as to how each frame is handled. you'll see these little exposure dislocations and jitter movements, which are all very natural when you shoot on actual film stock. And so what these tools are designed to do is to simulate that effect. You'll see that once I enable it and play this back through, there's subtle shifts in the exposure and the tints. Now, it's a little bit too much for my taste, so what I'll do is just lower the impact of this effect right here. It's maybe around 30 or so. See how that looks. Yeah, that's good. Now that looks a little bit more like my taste to me. Next, we have our overscan, or what I like to call our mapbox overlays. This is arguably probably my favorite element out of all of this, just because there's so many options you can choose from, and they're all built in from this list. So when I enable this, I mean, boom, that's just, you can add that and just make simple color grades, and you have such a nice aesthetic already. So you have your simple Super A, you have your Super 16. These are really interesting ones, and it's just a nice way to present your content, your film in a different way, you know. So you can change your gauge shape as well. Rougher edges, rounded edges, you name it. I'll keep it like it is right now. Now you can also add a little bit of defocusing, which is really nice too. So getting towards the end here, we have our vignetting, which is pretty self-explanatory. I think I'm gonna just turn the vignetting off. I don't think I need it in this case. And you can also turn off false color. So this is a nice way of just checking your exposure levels. And naturally, you know, I will say there is a tendency to crush the blacks when it comes to the film look, but there are opportunities to break the rules if you're making a purposeful aesthetic decision. So that's great. And then finally, you have your total output effect. If you want to just, you know, trim down the overall effect of everything, you can do that. And obviously, it's going to affect the whole thing. So think of it as like a final adjustment layer where you want to just adjust the overall intensity of everything. And then finally, you can generate your own LUT. So if you really like how this look turned out and you really attached to it, you want to use it on future projects, export that LUT, slap it onto your future clips. Such a seamless process, it's great. So that pretty much covers it. Now let's go ahead and just play it back one more time to see what we were able to come up with in this really brief editing session. So with that mini workshop under our belt, what are some of the things I really like about this plugin? One, for sure, the optionality. You have a plethora of film prints to choose from that are meticulously scanned to the plugin and allow for ultimate customization, each giving a very unique look. Within each subsection, you have the ability to refine the details and adjust the potency of each effect. Two, it's an all-in-one tool. It takes away the pain of designing a complex node tree, or if you're in Premiere or Final Cut, the confusion of having multiple adjustments layer. There's so much room for experimentation, and I can export various LUTs to apply to future projects to ensure that I have a very cohesive look across my films. Three, the film compression. You want those creamy highlights, those milky shadows, you can easily get that with this plugin. And of course, you can't forget the extra goodies that they've packed in to really spice up your footage. I used to have to go to various sites and download all these matte overlays, drag them into my media pool, and then drag them onto my timeline. As now I can easily access all of that from one dropdown, so I really appreciate that component. What I think can be improved? Well, the color head tool right now is designed to mimic Lightroom's color grading tools in a sense, but sometimes I do feel limited in how much I can push the colors in certain areas without imbuing other areas with that color. It's kind of like when you go into the individual RGB curves and adjust the color, you know, with different anchor points. I think it would be nice to have some more flexibility with that under the color head tool. Another thing that I think would be nice to add is some sort of glow tool similar to what DaVinci has built in. What I like about that tool is that it allows me to really unify the image and apply an atmosphere of one specific color I'm looking for. Right now there isn't really a way to do that with the halation or bloom tools, but of course this can be easily resolved by just adding another node on top of the node that has Dehancer and just playing around with other small adjustments here and there. So who's this plugin for? I'd say if you're serious about achieving a truly layered film look and not just a cinematic video with grain overlays while being able to do so in one panel, then Dehancer Pro could be a very nice option for you. If you're a beginner or you don't plan on doing any heavy editing, you just want a simple look, then you might not need it. DaVinci's built-in color grading tools are great, and that's what I've started with. And I've built a reliable node tree over time, and sometimes I still use it if I'm just looking for a quick edit that I can pump out. I will say that DaVinci on its own versus Dehancer produce two very different looks. Personally, I like to have both at my disposal. It all depends on your taste. Now, Dehancer isn't exactly cheap, but if you have the money to spend, I think it'll be worth the investment. It can definitely save you time. You can use my discount code Anton, all caps, at checkout, which will save you 10% and support your boy. Link is in the description. Oh, and here's a bonus feature. Dehancer actually has an app version for this plugin. I've been using it primarily for quick photo edits on my phone. I'll put some before and after images up here. It's the exact same interface. Again, super easy to use and a one-stop shop for making your photos look like they were shot on film. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, definitely check out Dehancer. It's a very versatile tool and it's been a valuable addition to my repertoire as a cinematographer. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below in the comments and tag me in your future projects created with Dehancer. I have a lot more videos in the pipeline, so stay on the lookout for that. In the meantime, remember there's always more marble to be carved.